What is a function? A function is a piece of program that takes some parameters, 0 or more parameters, and performs a task. Okay, each function performs a well-defined task. So the general way of using a function or calling a function is that we give the function name and some arguments. Let's do some examples. Let's look let's examine some examples. Here we have, for example, int 7.8. What int 7.8 will do, or before even that, we have, for example, print. We can have something like this: a is equal to 7, and print a. Print is a function. Okay, every function is followed by open and close parentheses, and if there are parameters, the parameters are put inside the parentheses. So let's say we have b equal to -2, and I want to print a and b. Print a comma b. Print is a function which has a flexible number of parameters. I can also write, for example, print with no parameter, which will only print one new line to the screen. Print is a special function. It may have 0 parameter, 1 parameter, 2 parameter, 5 parameter, 10 parameter. It may contain any number of parameters. Okay, but most other functions are not like that. Print is a function. Its purpose is just to print to the screen the content. Okay, a is printed, a and b is printed, and then after b printed, it also prints a new line. And if there is no parameter, it only prints a new line. So print is one of the functions. Let's say I will show you another function. C is equal to, I want to take absolute value of b. In Python, we have a function named ups. Ups just returns the absolute value of its argument. We give one argument, and it gives us absolute value of another. We cannot say this, okay? We cannot do something like this. Ups cannot take 2 parameters. It must only take one single parameter, and it always one parameter. So this is how we call it. We just make it like this, or I can also do it like that. I can put this ups and b. What I'm doing on that line, we have a print function, and the argument, the first argument of the print function is another function call. So what happens? First, ups b is executed. B is -2, therefore ups b, ups -2 gives me back +2, and prints the +2. So here the order of the execution is 1, ups b is executed, and then print is executed. Okay, because in order to execute print, the argument must be computed, must be ready. In order to make this ready, first ups b is executed. Let's write it executed. It returns a value, and then let's write it. Let's make it like this. Then after ups b is executed, we have a value here. It returns, and the returned value replaces the method call, the function call. This ups b is replaced with it's the value which is +2, because b is -2. Ups -2, absolute value of -2 is +2. So here +2 comes and prints 2 on screen. Here we have another one, print a comma b plus c, etc. If we have something like this, let's take this one, Control C, let's put it here. Okay, in that case, what happens? We have 2 parameters. Each parameter is an expression. The expression can be a single variable, or expression can contain some operators. Okay, This was an expression containing a single variable, or it can be a plus b, comma 77. Now I have three arguments. This print function call has three arguments. The first argument is a variable, is a single variable. The second argument is a mathematical operation, an addition. And then the third argument is a constant value. So A is automatically, it has some value. B plus C has to be executed first. B plus C is executed, a result comes here. And then 77 is already constant. So we have now, after execution of B plus C, all arguments are ready. Then print can be executed. Okay. Ups n minus 7. Ups b multiplied by 4 minus 17, for example, whatever. Okay. Here we can have an expression. This expression is computed, and then the argument of the ups is the result of this expression. What are the rules about a function call? Evaluate each argument one at a time, working from left to right. First, the first argument is made available, then second argument is made available, then third argument is made available. When every argument is ready, then those arguments are passed to the function, are given to the function. The function is executed. When the function finishes, if it returns a value in those, for example, print doesn't return any value, but ups returns a value. So what can we have? What we can have minus 9 multiplied by, let's call it another ups minus a, for example. Okay. So here the arguments are computed, evaluated. The arguments are passed to the function. Function is executed, and when the function is finished, then the value it returned replaces the function call. For example, what is b? B is minus 2. Minus 2 multiplied by 4 is minus 8. Minus 8 minus 19 is minus 27. So what is the value that comes here is minus 27. Okay. This will be the value after the argument is computed. So this is the first step. Evaluate the argument. Then pass the values to the absolute function. What is ups? What ups 20 minus 27 will do? It will give me back. This will give me back plus 27. Okay. So here, this is replaced with 27. Okay. Think about it like that. It's not replaced, but 27 comes here. We have 27 here, so let's write it somewhere here. We have 27 minus 9 multiplied by, we have another function call. What is A? A is 7. What is minus A? Minus 7. So minus 7 is made available. Ups function is called. Ups function for minus 7 will give me plus 7. Let's put it here. Minus 7 will give me plus 7. Therefore, this ups minus A is replaced with the value returned by the function. So I have this one. What is the result of this one? Since the multiplication operator has precedence over subtraction operator, first 9 multiplied by 27 is done. This is 63. 27 minus 63. We will get some. This will be equal to 63. 36. Okay, minus 36. So we will get that result. In order to do this, the first parameter is executed, is computed. Then ups function is called. It gets back a value. This is already fixed. So this has to be done first. Minus a is done. 7 multiplied by made minus is minus 7. Ups function is called. It gives me back 7. 7 comes here, and we have now all elements of this expression are ready. Then it is computed, and we get a result, and then the result is assigned to C. Is this clear? How a function is called and used? Up to now, we already used several functions. For example, we had used print function before. Up to now, we also used the input function n is equal to input blah 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 some stuff. We used input function. We used int function. What is int function? What int function does? Int function returns an integer equivalent of the given parameter argument. If we have, for example, a string 1, 2, 4, 8, this is a string. This is not a number. It gives me an integer number corresponding to the string 1048. Or if I have, for example, here 24.08 or 99, what I get, it converts this float value, this real number, to integer, we get 24. It removes the decimal part completely, okay? Now, some new functions. I will explain to you one or two more functions. The round function. Let's say a is equal to round 45.8. Or let's start with 0.2. When we round this to the next, to the nearest, not next, to the nearest integer, what we get? 45. But instead of this, let's make it, for example, 0.7. What is the nearest integer to this number? It is 46. Okay, so the round function alone will give me an integer that is the closest integer to the given number, which means that if after the decimal point we have, for example, 50001, I will get 46. But if I have 45.49999, I will get this. If the next digit is 4 or less, then we round down. If the next digit is 5 or more, we round up. Okay, either it rounds down or up. If the next digit is 4, it rounds down. If next digit is 5, it rounds up. We can also have something like this. We can have a second parameter in the round function. I will change the content to 5, comma 2. What does 2 means? This means round after 2 decimal digits. Okay, if there is a second parameter in the round function, then it means round after the second digit. After the second digit, what is the third digit? It is 4. So what we will have? 45.25, because this is the next one after 2 decimal digits. The next one is 4. It rounds down. Let's take this one, put here and comma 2, but let's put here 52, for example. So what will happen? We will get 45.26. Why? Because the next digit after 2 decimal digits, it says that round after 2 decimal digits. So what it does, it rounds after 45.25. What is the next digit? It is 5. So 5 is greater or equal to 5. So the result will be, it will round up. So the result will be 45.26. Okay. There is one interesting thing about rounding. Let's take this two. If the the decimal value is this not equals 0, what happens? Then it gives you a float number, not integer number. If the second parameter is omitted, it rounds to the closest integer number. But if the second parameter is 0 in the round function, then instead of giving the integer, it is similar to the previous one. This and this one and this one are quite similar, except since we have 0.0, we get the result as a float number, not integer number. Mathematically, the values are same, but one has data type integer, the other one has data type float. Okay.
Professor, may I ask a question?
Yes.
At the down there it says A equals around 45.25, 48 round by 2. That equals 45.25. Why is it the same? Shouldn't it be like 45.24? Like I couldn't understand that point.
Just omit this 45, so you get 45.25. Okay. This is rounded down, so instead of 48, we get 00. But here 52, it goes up and makes this 6. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
It is similar to this one. Okay. Here the 999 is omitted, or yeah, same way 48 is omitted. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I have talked about int. I should also tell a few things about other type conversion functions. Int is a type conversion function which converts something to integer. And you know that we have, for example, x is equal to float. Assume that we have, for example, 41, 42, blah, blah, blah. This is a string. Float converts the argument to a float number. So what we get 42.708. Okay. Similar to int. Or I can have, for example, int 42. Float for the float function, I have an integer argument. In that case, what is the result? It is 42.0. This 42 integer 42 is converted to a float number. Okay. By the way, if I have, if I compare if 42 equal 42.0. If I have something, if I have two variables, assume that 42, the first A is 42 and B is 42.0. Assume that we have something like this. A is equal to 42 and B is equal to 42.0. If I have one integer compared with a float number, but if their values are equal, then we will get true. Okay, so from here we will get true. This is something that you have to know. Python compares the values regardless of their type. Okay, if there are two different things, if one integer is compared with a float number, then it takes the float version of the integer and then compare them. And if the values are equal, then you get true. Yeah, this is something that is worth knowing. I was talking about float, etc. One other important, maybe even more important function than int and float is str. In order to convert something to string, we can use str, for example, a. Or let's say s2 is equal to str x. A is integer x is float, we can convert an integer or a float to string. And I had already mentioned before that in order to concatenate two strings, we can use the plus operator. I can have, for example, if I want to have the number a, if I want to create a string from this 24 and this 42, for example, something like I want to create a string which contains 24 and 42.0. From this variables, variable a and x, I want to create this something like that. How can I do that? I can write S3, for example, equal, convert the first string. Let's remove this. Let's take this one here. String a plus here after 24, what do we need? Space and space. So here I have space and space and plus str x. Okay. So what I did, converted the variable a to string, concatenated to the end of that string space and space, and concatenated to the end of this the string version of x. Okay, so I get a string something like this from these two values, from a and x. Okay, so string function is frequently used in such cases. If I want to print, for example, something like this, if I want to print plus between, if I want to have on my screen something like this, what I will do, I will write print here, blah blah blah, and parentheses here. Okay, print has one argument, and this argument has an expression. There are two plus string concatenation operators. A is converted to string, concatenate to the string, a string, and concatenate to that string another string, and we get something like this, and it is printed. Let me look here. Boom, boom, boom. We will learn file function later on when we will see how we can read from files and write to files. But, we will see also format later on, but we will not see most of the others. We already know input, we know int, len. Len is quite frequently used. If we have a string, s is equal to blah, 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 blah. If I want to get the number of characters and the s len of s gives me the number of characters in this string. Okay. Also, we can have lists which contain many elements. If I want to get how many elements is in a list, then we can use len. Len gives me either number of characters in a string or number of elements in a list, etc. So len function will be frequently used. List is used, I will teach you the lists in a few weeks time. List is used to create a list. Locus long map max. Okay, let's see what is max. Assume I have a, comma b, comma c, comma d is equal to 7, 4, 8, 3. So if I use, for example, something like n is equal to max a, b, c, d, let's copy this here. Max is a function which gives back the maximum value among its arguments. It can have 2 arguments, 3 arguments, 4 arguments, 5 arguments. Max has a flexible number of arguments, and the purpose is to give back the maximum value. So here from this, what will be the result? What is the maximum of these values? It is 8. So we will get 8 as a result. And similarly, we have the min function, which gives us the minimum. What is the minimum of these numbers? It is 3. So we'll get 3. Okay. Of course, we can have here b minus 4, d multiplied by 2. What will happen? Instead of 4, we have 4 minus 4, 0 here. So the maximum is still 8. And here, what is the minimum? 7, 4, 8. D is 3. 3 multiplied by 2 is 6. So the last argument is 6. So what is the minimum? It is 4. Okay. So when we have a function call, the arguments may be some expressions. So max gives us the maximum. Min gives us the minimum. Let's go print. We know the print function. We know the range function, which produces a number of values. We will learn set. I also already taught you round. We will see set functions when the set data structures will be explained to you. str, we already know it. Sum, okay. What is sum function do? Total, let's use this sum of ABCD. The sum function takes one or more parameters and returns back the sum of all its arguments. 7 plus 4, 11, plus 8, 19, plus 3, 22. So we will get from here 22. Okay. That is similar to max and min. Max gives the maximum value among its arguments. Min gives us the minimum value among its arguments. And sum function gives us the sum of all arguments. If I want to use something like that, this will be not possible because sum is a function name. If I try to name a variable as sum, this will not work. That's why I used total. Okay. If you want to use sum, just put here 1 or sum a or whatever. Okay. Just put one more valid variable character after sum, so you can then use the sum function. If in your program you have sum is equal to, for example, 5 multiplied by a, etc., and then when you try to use something like that, you will get an error message here, okay? Because sum is already used as a variable name, therefore you cannot anymore use the sum function. So I advise you not to use the sum function, sum as a variable name, but instead, most of the time I use the variable total, or sometimes I use sum1, for example. We will learn the tuples later on. Type gives us the type of a given data. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is the function that we will see. Apart from the functions that I've explained up to now, print, ups, round, input, int, float, str, len are the major functions that we will, and max, min, and sum as well. These are the functions that we will be using throughout the semester, plus, of course, the list function and dict. Where is dict? There is a function named dict for dictionaries. One for tuples and one for sets. I will explain to you the lists, dictionaries, and tuples and sets during the semester, and we will also be using those functions later on. I have another about 15 minutes, let's say. How can I define my own function? We can write our own functions in a program. How do I do it? We start with def. We give a function name, okay? My function, let's say. And we put parentheses. Of course, between parentheses, we will write parameters. And then let's say this will take, for example, a comma b, 2 parameters. And then as in if statement, for statement, while statement, when we have a function, all the statements in the functions are indented equally, okay? So my function will look something like that. And how do I call it? After defining the function, I can have, for example, x is equal to 7 and y is equal to 4, and I can call my function. If it returns a value, like in ups or int, str, etc., they all return a value. Therefore, we use this round function, it returns a value, etc. Input returns a value, int returns a value, float returns a value. Therefore, we use it either on the right-hand side of the assignment operator or just in another in an expression which is either printed or something like that. So but for example, print function doesn't return anything to us, or we don't use the value returned by the print function. We call print, and print prints the screen. Okay, so there is a major difference between input, int, float, etc. This gives us something back. Okay, int 24.99 will give me 24. Float 42 will give me 42.0. I use it either in an assignment statement or in a print statement. str gives me something back, but print doesn't give anything to me. Okay, therefore, when we have a return statement inside the function, then it is either at the right-hand side of assignment operator or in an expression like this. So let's assume that let's write here what this function will do. It will return a value which is the square of the first one plus the square of the second one square root. Okay, square root of the square of the first one, and a square plus b square, the square root of the a square plus b square. Let's look here if there is any square root function, sqrt. There is no such function. How can I find this sum of the squares? Sum of the squares is equal to a multiplied by a is a square plus b multiplied by b is b square. I can also write this like that. Sum of squares is equal to a to the power 2 plus b to the power 2. A multiplied by a is equal to a to the power 2. B multiplied by b is equal to b to the power 2. Here I just type 1, 2, 3, but here I type 4. So this is slightly easier to type. So what I need, I will return square root of SS. How can I return? How can I get square root of SS? SSS, let's say, is equal to SS to the power 0.5. If you take power 0.5 of something, you get its square root. Okay. So we can have, for example, return SSS. Or I can write the same function also like that. I could write, let's say, my function 2, the second version of the same function, return, let's take this, put a parenthesis here, square power of 0.5. Remove these two lines. So this function and this function performs identical operations. Okay. So here I give two numbers and I get a float value, which is like assume that A is a one perpendicular side of a right triangle. B is the second side, okay, and the third side, the hypotenuse. This returns us the hypotenuse. Okay, assume that this is hypotenuse. Assume that this is the name of the function. Hypotenuse 2. So I want, if a right triangle has one right side 7 and the other right side 4, what is the third side? So Z is equal to, I will call the get hypotenuse. With, of course, what is the sides X and Y. What happens? X, which is 7, and Y, which is 4, 7 and 4, are transferred here. A becomes 7. B becomes 4. Okay. With 7 and 4 for A and B, it does the computations. Here A is 7. If I call get hypotenuse 2, A is 7, B is 4. 7 multiplied by 7, 49. B 4 times 4, 16. 49 plus 16, 64. It's not 64. 49, 59, 63. No, 66, 65. And get the square root of 65, blah, blah. So here I will get a result. 7 point, blah, blah, whatever it is. And then that result will be put here. Okay. Is this okay? This is how we write our functions, how we define our functions. We have the keyword def written first, and then the name of the function between parentheses 0 or more parameters. And then we have the body of the function. We do some computations. Careful, all statements are equally indented. Of course, we may have here something like if there is a condition. Of course, naturally, we will have more indentation here. We can if statements, while statements, for statements, etc. Anything can be written in the body of a function. So when we have a function like this, our arguments, here the arguments are X and Y, which are 7 and 4, are transferred to the parameters. Here, when in the definition of the function, we call these parameters, okay? These are called parameters. But in function call, we call these not parameters, but arguments. Arguments are transferred to parameters, and the function body is executed using those values that comes from arguments to parameters. Here we have arguments. And here, these are formal parameters. Parameters, or sometimes it's also called formal parameters. I can have another example. I can have, for example, 15. I can compute the third side third equal get hypotenuse, blah, blah. With one side is 15, other side is 20, and the result will be 25. Okay. So here, this SS is a local variable. This A and B are also local variable. The variables here, A, B, SS, and triple SS, are all local variables. If I have something like this, here I cannot, even if I call this one, I cannot try to print, for example, A. Because here in this main part, A doesn't exist. A exists here, and it is used there. But it is local, this parameters and the variables defined in the function are local to the function. I cannot print A, or I cannot print SS or SSS, okay? Because these are local here. They do not exist in that part, in the main part. This is quite simple. If any here A, B, C, X are local, first term, second term, third term are all local. So here in this quadratic function, we have 7 local variables, A, B, C, X. First term, second term, and third term are all local variables. Let's solve one or two of these. This is probably exam lab question, but I will solve it anyway in this lecture. Let's take this one, copy, put it here. Write a function that gets an integer as parameter and returns the factorial of the parameter. What's a factorial? N factorial is equal to 1 multiplied by 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by blah 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 up to n. Okay, we know that what factorial is. How can we write a factorial function? Def. Let's call it factorial to be simple. It will get one parameter. Okay, we have one parameter. Let's call it n. So here in the factorial method, we will find a result. Let's say f, and at the end we will return f, which will be the factorial of n. Okay, at the end of this statements here, it will be the factorial of the input value of the parameter. How do we do it? We start with 1. And starting from, let's say 2 to n, for example, of course, what we can do is we can check if the parameter is negative or not, and we can give an error message or something like that. But assume that this factorial function will be called with a positive integer number. In that case, we will not do any control of the parameter. We will write a for loop for j in range. Start with 2. I already assigned 1 here, but I can put here 1. It doesn't matter. The result will be same anyway. To n plus 1. Why? Because in range function, the second parameter is exclusive. In order to go up to n, I have to put here n plus 1. Then it will generate values like 2, then 3, 4, 5, blah, 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 up to n. Okay. If I put here just n, it will go up to n minus 1. I don't want that. I want to go up to n. So I need to put here plus 1. And what I do here, f multiplied by j. Now j gets the values 2, 3, blah, blah, up to n. I have to start with 1. Attention, not with 0. I have to start with 1. Even if I put here 1, again I have to put here 1. If I put here 0, 0 multiplied anything will remain as 0. Okay. For multiplication, the neutral value is 1. So anyway, I have to start with 1. Either here 1 or 2 doesn't matter. It doesn't change the result. I multiply here I multiply every value generated in this range function that I put into the variable j, or let's say k, is multiplied, or the value of f is multiplied by this. Then 1 is multiplied by 2, and then by 3, 4, 5, up to n. And at the end, f of when the for loop is finished, f will contain the factorial of n, because here we go up to n. Okay, so we can write a factorial function like this. Any questions so far? How do we call it? Let's write a program. A is equal to int input, enter an integer number. We get an input, and then what we do, factorial of A is equal to factorial of A. I just put here, let's say B, doesn't matter. Personally, if I write something like that, I want to get the factorial of A, so I will put FA or something like that, but B is very fine. Print the factorial of comma A is comma B, something like this. Okay, so we are printing the factorial of, then a space, value of A, then a space, is, then a space, and the value of B will be printed with this print function. This is our own function. The factorial is our own function. When it comes to here, it will call this function. The value of A that we enter, assume that we are entering 8, or let's make it simple, 6. Okay, 6. Assume that I entered 6. 6 will go here, and will be equal to 6. So here it will be up to 6 in this example. So 1 multiplied by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all multiplied and accumulated in variable f, and the local variable f is returned. 1 multiplied by 2, 6. What are the things? 2 and then 6. Then 4 times 6, 24. 5 times 24 is 120. 6 times is 720. So factorial of 6 is 720. It will return 720, and B, the 720 will come and replace the function call here. The value of B will be 720, and it will print the factorial of 6 is 720. Okay. So this is the end of my lecture. Do you have any questions?